Chapter 5, Intruders. I suppose it doesn't make a ton of sense to scream when you hear a scream, but that's what we did. George and I were so stunned, so freaked out, that it took us a moment to realize that the door was still closed and we were still alone in the basement. The scream was coming from upstairs. Bess? George cried, and her dark eyes wide with worry. Did something happen to her? Let's go, I said. But by that time, George was already across the basement and mounting a narrow staircase. I bolted behind her, and we ran up the kitchen as fast as we possibly could. Bess? George shouted when we emerged into the kitchen. What happened? Are you okay? I'm in here. Bess's voice floated in from the living room. After the intensity of her scream, she sounded eerily calm. I couldn't help thinking of what Willa had told us about Izzy, how quiet she was after Willa found her in the basement. My breath caught in my chest. What's going on? We rushed into the living room where Bess was standing straight and calm. I was so relieved to see her that it took me a moment to realize she wasn't the only person in the room. She was facing off with 3 teenage boys. Hey, George cried, frowning at one of the new intruders. We know you. Owen? I cried because I realized who he was. Owen, Willa's brother, who we met at the movie theater. Owen, who hadn't really wanted to be there, but did back up his sister's claims about Izzy. What are you doing here, Owen? George demanded. What did you do to freak out my cousin? Owen's scowl looked less than apologetic, but then he seemed to undergo a change, standing up straight and softening his features. Look, I'm sorry we scared you, he said to Bess. I forgot that we met before, and I didn't know anyone was in here. This is Dev and Wyatt, my friends. Bess, George, and I all nodded at the boys. Hi, and what exactly are you all doing here? The boys looked a little embarrassed, especially Owen. Well, I guess rumors are going around school now about what happened to Izzy, he said. A lot of people, including my friends, wanted to check out the haunted house. Bess was frowning. That's interesting, isn't it? She asked, a skeptical look on her face. What do you mean? Owen asked. She shrugged. Just that word is spreading around your school about what happened to your sister's friend. And aren't you the only one at your school who knows Izzy? Isn't she in middle school? Good point. I shot Bess an appreciative glance, slightly thanking her for her quick thinking. Dev and Wyatt chuckled nervously, and Wyatt glanced sideways at Owen and coughed over the word busted. Owen grinned sheepishly and looked down at the floor. Okay, I might have said something to my friends about Izzy. He looked up, glancing from Bess to George to me. There's nothing wrong with that, is there? It's super weird. I don't believe in ghosts personally, but Dev watches all the real-life ghost hunter docs, so I brought him and Wyatt to check it out. I raised my eyebrows. You don't believe in ghosts personally, so you hire us to check out the haunted house and then turn it into a tourist attraction? Wyatt laughed loudly. Dude, he said, cuffing Owen on the arm. I don't know what you did to this girl, but she's mad. But Owen was looking less amused, even defensive now. There's nothing wrong with my bringing friends here, he said. Not any more wrong than you being here already. And besides, Will hired you, not me. Okay, but you were there. He looked up at me, hostility flashing in his eyes. I didn't hire you. I wouldn't have. Is that so? I asked evenly. You don't have a lot of faith in my abilities, huh? He shook his head. That's not it. I don't know anything about you. He paused, looking around the trash living room. I just don't think there's a mystery to solve here. George placed a hand on her hips. But you just said you don't believe in ghosts, she pointed out. That's right, Owen said. Bess let out a frustrated sigh. So if it's not ghosts, what do you think is happening with Izzy? Owen lifted his chin and shrugged. Isn't it obvious, he said? She's playing my sister. None of this is real. That surprised me, but I tried to keep my face neutral as I asked, why would she do that? When Owen looked surprised by the questions, I added, they're best friends, right? It's obviously making Willa really upset. Owen kept his chin high, almost challenging. I don't know, he said finally, looking away toward his friends. I just know she's faking. I've been paying so much attention to Owen that I didn't notice that Wyatt and Dev had started moving around the room, checking out all the furniture and decorations. Oops, Wyatt called now, followed by a huge crash. I turned around and saw that he'd knocked an old framed print off the wall, and the glass had shattered in the frame. Hey, George yelled, frowning. What's the big deal? Dev asked, holding his arms wide. Place is trashed anyway. It's not like anyone lives here. Well, not anyone alive, he snickered. Bess looked from his face down to the level of his waist. Is that spray paint, she asked? Sure enough. When Dev had spread his arms, his jacket had been parted to reveal cans of spray paint in each of his pants pockets. He stammered, quickly pulling his jacket to cover them. I fished my phone out of my pocket and held it up. All right, I said. Look, it's been fun, guys, but the fact is we're all trespassing here, and I think we should all leave now or else I'll call the cops. Wyatt and Dev immediately started whining, but Owen looked right at me with a look of barely contained fury. Who put you in charge, he asked. I guess no one did, I said, irritated, but I have a phone with 911 button and a pretty good relationship with the River Heights PD. If I call and they show up, who do you think they're going to believe, me or you? Owen scowled at me, but turned, shook his head, and finally said to his friends, We better go, guys. Sorry. He turned back and glared at me again. We can come back another time when Princess Nark isn't here. I couldn't help smirking. Princess Nark? I said, nodding my approval. Most people just call me Nark, or Miss Nark, or Narky Pants. Thanks for the promotion. Owen grunted and turned back toward the broken window. He climbed out, followed by his friends. Bess and George looked at me. Are we really done here? George asked, looking around with almost wistful expression. For now, I said. I think we saw everything there is to see. Except the locked room, she said in a low voice. I nodded. Except that. But now isn't the time. We all climbed back through the window and then circled around to the front of the house where the boys had collected near an old Honda Civic. There was an awkward moment where they just watched us watching them. Aren't you going to go? I asked finally. Owen scowled again. Come on, guys, he said, pulling out a set of car keys and walking around to the driver's side door of the Civic. I heard the click of the doors unlocking, and then Wyatt and Dev reluctantly got into the front passenger seat and back seat, respectively. 3 petulant faces watched me as Owen started up the ignition. After a few minutes, the car pulled into the street. George, Bess, and I watched as Owen drove to the end of Heliotrope Lane and then turned onto Elm Street. George started to say something, but I held up my hands to stop her as I listened to the engine noise dwindling in the distance. After a minute or so, when the car didn't reappear, I nodded. Shall we go? Please, Bess said. I think I'm all good on haunted houses for the night. George raised an eyebrow at me. Did you find anything useful, Nancy? I shook my head. I don't think so. I was freaked out in there, I'll admit, but I don't think we found any evidence the place is haunted. Unsettling, yes. Being torn apart by curious trespassers, yes. George agreed. If I were Mrs. Furstenberg and I saw what was happening to my house, I might be mad enough to haunt it, but I don't think we saw a ghost in there. Bess shuddered. Thank heavens. We walked over our parked cars, and just as I pulled out my key fob and pushed the unlock button, I heard Bess's gasp. Oh no. I turned around and saw Bess holding her hand in front of her face, looking crestfallen. What happened, asked George? Did you get a cut or something? Bess shook her head. Worse, she said. My charm bracelet's gone. George groaned. The one your dad gave you? She asked. Bess nodded. You wore it tonight? George asked. I wear it all the time, Bess said innocently. I just didn't think to take it off. Anyway, it must have fallen off in the house, guys. I can't leave without it, but I think it might be in one of the bedrooms. I sort of remember hearing the clink, but there were so many weird noises, I didn't think much about it. I took in a breath, glancing back at the dark, creepy house. I don't want to go back in there. My stomach clenched at the very thought. But I also knew I was being a wuss. We hadn't found any evidence of ghosts in the house, and I couldn't exactly ask Bess to give up a beloved gift just because she dropped it in a scary place. She was my friend, and I owed it to her to help her find it. Okay, I said, locking my car again. Let's go back in. The living room of the house was just as we left it, except it seemed even darker now after being outside. I looked at the broken art print on the floor and cringed. How long before everything in here is completely wrecked? Bess hesitantly walked down the hall to the bedrooms, peeking her head into the first. George and I followed a few steps behind. Look out, George said. Spoiler, there's a rat in there. Bess suddenly let out a gasp and sprinted into the room, grabbing something from the floor near the mattress. Here it is, guys, she said. She wrapped the chain around her wrist and quickly clasped it. Thank goodness. Okay, now we can go. But as we all went back to the living room, I heard it. Hold on, I whispered, holding out my hand for everyone to stop and be quiet. A loud sound, almost like a rumbling. It was coming from the basement. I could hear my friend's ragged breaths as well as we struggled to make out the sound. At first there was silence, and I wondered if I was hearing things, getting tired and loopy, but then I heard it again. Not rumbling, moaning. Ugh. Eyes pricked at my veins as I turned to face my friends, who looked just as horrified as I was. Someone down there? Or something that used to be somebody? Then suddenly we were all knocked off our feet by a sudden, much larger sound. Woo, 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 woo. Police sirens. Oh no, George groaned, his flashing eyes reflected off the walls. A voice began speaking through a megaphone. We know you're in there. You're trespassing on private property. Come out with your hands up. My friends and I all did as the police said. Soon we were lined up on the front lawn, blinded by high-powered flashlights as 2 officers looked up and down, their lips pursed with disgust. One of them was Officer Faith Fernandez. We've gotten reports of kids running around the abandoned house, she said, but Nancy Drew, is that you? I nodded. I said, not sure where to start. Maybe it won't surprise you, but you're working on a case? Officer Hernandez's partner, Officer Collins, filled in. He didn't exactly look impressed. Yeah, I admitted. Officer Fernandez sighed. Honestly, she muttered, looking behind us at the abandoned house. Well, listen, ladies, I think you better come with us. She unclipped a pair of handcuffs from her belt and held them up, glinting in the light.